North Korea has launched a spy satellite into space, something confirmed by the South Korean government, though Seoul says it is too early to determine whether the satellite is working in the way Pyongyang claims. This was the North's third attempt to put a satellite into orbit after 2 failures earlier this year. According to South Korean intelligence analysts, Russia played a role, providing expert advice by helping analyze what went wrong with the first 2 launches. Hours after the launch, North Korean state media showed its leader Kim Jong-un already reviewing images of U.S. military bases in Guam. South Korea's National Intelligence Service, however, expressed skepticism, suggesting that was more propaganda flair than fact. South Korea's reaction has been sharp, with the military deploying more of what it calls surveillance assets to the border and announcing the suspension of a 5-year-old military accord it had maintained with the North.
The North Korean regime is entirely responsible for the whole of this situation. And if North Korea makes any additional provocation, our military will immediately and vigorously punish North Korea based on the firm South Korea-US joint defense posture.
On Thursday, North Korea retaliated by announcing that it was scrapping the military deal too and would strengthen forces along its border with the South as well. Pyongyang issued this statement on state media, quote, "We will withdraw the steps taken to prevent military conflict in all spheres, including ground, sea, and air, and deploy more powerful armed forces and new type military hardware along the demarcation line," end quote. The region's largest player, China, attempted to downplay the satellite launch by simply saying it had taken note that it had happened. Beijing called on all parties to wind back tensions.
The situation is how it is for a reason. It's in the interests of all countries in the region to ensure peace and stability and promote a political settlement. We hope all parties can keep calm and exercise restraint.
For more, we have DW's East Asia correspondent James Chater. James, can you place the satellite launch in the context of what feels like an endless number of missile launches from North Korea? How significant is this, and how does it fit into Pyongyang's overall strategy?
Well, if proven that this satellite is operational, there's no doubt it's a really significant moment. This has been a stated core aim of North Korea for years now. Questions remain, of course, about its effectiveness, how useful the information that it provides will be. Earlier this year, South Korea retrieved remains of a failed launch. We've had 2 of those from North Korea last year, and they said that it provided low-resolution images. There's already been some quite interesting reporting suggesting that North Korea deliberately destroyed the launch rocket to stop it being recovered by South Korea or US authorities this time. But if the latest one did work, what North Korea wants us to be able to do is to provide real-time information on US and South Korean operations in the region, and that would allow Pyongyang to know about any large-scale troop movements. Pyongyang has, of course, promised more launches of this nature, and it's important to remember that international observers have long criticized North Korea's supposedly civilian satellite launches, but military in this case, as ballistic missile tests in disguise.
I want to discuss a G7 foreign ministers' joint statement in response to the launch. In it, it also warns against further cooperation between Russia and North Korea, saying, quote, "We are deeply concerned about the potential for any transfer of nuclear or ballistic missile-related technology to North Korea, which would further threaten the peace and stability of the region as well as across the globe," end quote. How troubling is this possibility that Russia stepped in to help with the launch?
Well, South Korean intelligence services have said that there was Russian assistance on this latest launch from North Korea. There's still a bit of debate about the extent of that support, but what there's really not debate on right now is the depth of this relationship now between Pyongyang and Moscow. One analyst I was speaking to today simply told me that North Korea is no longer isolated. What's maybe happening is that these 2 isolated countries are finding useful allies in each other. Of course, Kim Jong-un had this landmark trip in September to Russia's northeast, where he met with Putin in a cosmodrome of all places. There, Kim received briefings on Russian space technology, including satellites, and Putin promised to help build some of those North Korean satellites. But yeah, this is all part of a broader concern about this deepening relationship between Pyongyang and Moscow, which includes recent US allegations that Pyongyang has been supplying weapons to Moscow for its ongoing invasion of Ukraine. That is something that both countries deny.
Can you tell us more about this military accord that both sides, North and South Korea, have walked away from?
Yeah, this was a landmark agreement signed between the two Koreas in 2018, shortly after those very heady days of then US President Donald Trump meeting with Kim Jong-un in Singapore. The core aim of that accord was really to mitigate and lower the risk of accidental conflict being sparked by these two militaries, which are really operating in, of course, such close proximity to each other. That included stopping military drills near the border, the demilitarized zone between the two Koreas, and literally putting covers over some of the naval guns. A lot of that accord, what was reached with that accord, seems to have been undone with this latest launch. Both sides have said they will start military activity near the border again, with South Korea saying they'll restart reconnaissance activities near the demilitarized zone. And crucially, more worryingly, that both Koreas have said that the other side will be responsible, both sides saying this, if this escalates further now.
What does this say in terms of the current climate in South Korea? I mean, this military accord was made at a time when it was under a different president.
Absolutely. This is a really important point. This accord was, of course, signed in 2018 under the presidency of Moon Jae-in. We now have a different president in South Korea, Yoon Suk-yeol, who is viewed as being much more hawkish when it comes to the question of North Korea, and also, crucially, having to respond to and balance and navigate even more hawkish voices in his cabinet, which have called for that accord to be scrapped completely by the South Korean side. Right now, South Korea has only scrapped one element, one clause of this agreement, but there are voices within South Korea that are calling for the agreement to be kind of thrown out completely. So you get a sense of the different political landscape within South Korea, which is really affecting some of the decision-making here in Seoul. And that, I think, is what's worrying some people of the prospects for any type of agreement like this being revived in the near future.
Got it. Now, you're in Taipei. A lot of the concern these days when it comes to security in the Indo-Pacific is about a potential conflict between China and Taiwan. But should the world be keeping a closer eye on what's happening on the Korean Peninsula?
Absolutely. There's obviously so much concern directed at Taiwan and tensions with Beijing. It's easy to forget that, of course, these two countries, the two Koreas, are technically still at war, and that this represents a very real threat to regional security and stability, especially when you think of the size of the US presence in South Korea and Pyongyang's stated aim of expanding its nuclear force, and the US wanting to kind of move ahead with steps for denuclearization. I think for Western leaders, there really is a troubling coalition of powers that are concentrating around North Korea now when you think of Pyongyang's expanding relationship with Moscow, but also the relationship that it of course has with Beijing too. Some analysts I was speaking to today say that triad of powers is really shifting the geopolitical state of play for not just South Korea, but of course Japan too, which is facing three threats from China, North Korea, and Russia. And I think, this latest launch is just a reminder once again of the extremely fractious geopolitical situation that exists not just in Asia, but across the entire world now.
James Chater, thank you for joining us.